Let's check out a swale. It begins at this drainage pipe in the case of this swale, because this drainage pipe carries rainwater from the front yard out into the backyard. And we don't want all the water to just stay in one spot. So we made a little river. It's kind of like playing at the beach when you're a kid. You can make a little depression. So we brought this depression, this little stream bed, all the way down to here, where it begins to curve across. And this is just a little bridge made out of a plank of wood. And then the swale becomes hard to see because it's now growing profusely with both planted and naturalized plants. But the swale runs alongside here and all the way down where it peters out right about here. And on a good rainstorm day, we'll get enough water to bring it all the way down here. And you can see next to the swale is this mound, which was simply the dirt that we dug out when we were making the swale. So the mound is going to be drier soil, and the swale is moist soil. So it's kind of an interesting little combination of land sculpting. This is land sculpting. So, and let's show you one more view of the swale from here. I think it's easier to see it this way. And it just heads right up here. So that's one example of a swale. Here's another example of a swale that I needed to create because when I first planted this lovely nectarine tree, I made a huge hole and I filled it full of amendments according to the practices that I had learned as an employee at a garden store, that we should add lots of amendments and that makes it perfect. But what I found was after a year or two, the amendments disappeared, they sank, the hole sank, the tree was sinking down, and this tree is below ground level now, which is okay because water tends to go down near the root zone, but it was too much. So I built a swale. Let me see if I can catch it on camera here. It's basically just this little channel that runs all the way down here. A bunch of Swiss chard started growing in it. But here it is, running down here, and there's the berm. And so it runs all the way down here to what used to be a little pond. And if it did really rain hard, we would have this area would be another pond again. But right now it's filled in with compost and growing some plants. But this is another example of using a swale, which I had to do in order to save that tree that was planted too deeply. So you can see it's a nice lush area for the plants to grow. They especially like growing in the swale. I did clear this out to plant some seeds in here. So some of it is cleared out. But that's another example of a swale. Here's a little drawing I made to illustrate the lowered garden bed with the hugel culture behind it in the berm. So you can see the water on the top right, water's flowing down. It lands into the swale, which I've called, in this drawing, I called it a trench, but you could also call it a swale because it's a lowered area that stays moister and shadier. And then where all these circles are, those are supposed to represent logs and twigs and branches and other garden material that I buried even deeper into the soil. And as you can see, the lowered bed stays moister than the raised bed, and any water that flows into the lowered bed and overflows or fills it too much, it will fall down deeper into the hugel culture and settle there. And as it flows down through the compost in the bed, it flows in as compost tea, so it's better than just plain water. And then it lands in the hugel, and from there it has a chance to soak down more deeply into the soil. So that is the concept of this last swale. But when the water comes down here, it can land into this swale, this depression, this lowered garden bed. And then if it gets too full, it can go deeper into the hugel culture behind it and soak from there even deeper into the water table. This concept is appropriate for a gentle slope. You wouldn't want to do something like this on a steep incline because the hugel bed might tend to fall apart and fall down the hill. Here is one more swale. This is actually a lowered garden bed, which is just basically a sort of an oblong hole about 2.5 feet deep, backfilled with soil and composted material, in which I've planted a variety of potatoes. So I just did this the other day, so you can't see anything growing yet. But this is also in the definition of a swale. A simple lowered garden bed can work wonders in a dry climate like ours in the San Diego area, or any southwestern or dry climate.